I'm Laura, I'm an alcoholic. It doesn't get easier, and I've shared now, this will be the third time I'm sharing for my 10 years, and I think I'm more nervous today than I have been. And like I was giggling now when you were talking because it feels surreal. It feels, for those of you who don't know me, I will probably cry because I do that. But it does, it feels so insane. We hear it said that an alcoholic or an addict or anybody with an addiction problem, it's a miracle for them to stay clean for a day. And today I am 10 years and 26 days clean. And that is insane. I love that daily reflections reading about the 12th step, because if it wasn't for people in these rooms practicing their 12th step on me, I would be dead. Not I would still be out there, or I would be dead. There's no two ways about that. When I entered these rooms, I was lost, I was scared, I had no sense of self. I had a lot of fight in me, but not God's will, my will. I was a big ball of defect and pity. I came into these rooms very, very young, and I didn't get it straight away. Like I said, I had a lot of fight in me, and I thought I could do it my way. I'm very stubborn still to this day, very, very stubborn, and I'm a master at convincing myself that my plans are great, which they're not. I have great ideas and great dreams and great plans, but I've heard it said that God laughs when you make plans, and that's been very, very true in my journey. I believe that my road to get me here started long before any substance. As a little girl, I always wanted more of whatever there was, and I never felt like I fitted. One of my very first, and a few of you who have heard my share, it's a very pertinent thing in my recovery, because it's where the game changed for me, was when I realized that as a young girl, this is way before substance, I used to go into the garden, and we had this long path at the back of the garden that the lawn just never got mowed. And I used to go and hide there, not in pain or sadness or anything, not that I can remember. I can't put an emotion behind why I went there, but I used to always go to this part of the garden, and I found such comfort in being alone in my little imaginary world in this grass. And when I was about 60 days clean, I was in a group, and we went, they took us through an important time in our active addiction. And although this wasn't active addiction in terms of substance, that was the point where I left Laura. I left Laura in that garden all those years ago, running from what? I don't know. I mean, my mom is my best friend right now. It's been a long journey to get to that point, but my mom is an absolute angel in my life, and she worked really, really hard. She was a single mom. She got married and divorced twice. My biological father died of this disease when I was 18 months sober, and my mom she was always just strong, and I can't look at my behavior and my active addiction and blame my mother or blame my father or blame my stepdad or my sisters. I always was running from life, running from people, but at the same time I was desperate for their approval, desperate for their love, desperate for their attention, desperate for their affirmation, you know. I grew up with 3 sisters, and they all had their thing, you know. Each one of them had something that they were good at, or something that they were. I always used to look at them and think how confident they were in just being who they were, and I never felt that as a girl, never. When I found substance, immediately, you know, from the very first time that I took a mood or mind altering substance when I was 9 years old, it felt like home. It felt like more, and it felt like, it felt like that's what I wanted. And now the chase was on. You know, I was already running through imagination and all that other crap, but now the chase was on, and from the age of 9, that was me. You know, I chose to rebel. I chose to be a little shit. Sorry, I swear as well, for those of you who don't know me very well. A few months after, it was actually a holiday in Ballito, because I'm from Joburg, and we were in Ballito, and that was when I first found substance and this rebellious side of me. And a few months later, there I was getting high in my bedroom by myself, and that is not normal. It's quite frightening now. My son is 6, and like in 3 years' time, you know, it's scary to think that he could be doing those things. Please God, he doesn't. And, you know, I do. I put a lot of my program into being a good mom and to trying to create a safe place for my kids to be themselves and express their emotions, because I think that's something that I either never had, or I felt I wasn't ever safe enough to talk. So my journey started as a little girl, and it ended as a lost little girl. I very quickly went from, you know, a substance is a substance is a substance. It doesn't matter what it is. But towards the end of my active addiction, I was on heavy street drugs, using intravenously and living on the streets, hustling for the next hit, hustling for the next fix, and all the chaos and the drama between that little girl on the beach that got high to the little girl that came in here broken, because I was little, you know, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, not physically, but I was still that same little girl, just with a hell of a lot of street experience, junkie pride, arrogance, ego, tools of manipulation, and just a broken soul. A broken soul, that's, I think, the only way that I can explain it. An empty, hollow, broken nothing. And I'm going to go back to what I said about that reading. People loved me here when I could not. There was nothing to love about me. You know, people would be so nice to me, and they'd take me for coffee and fetch me for meetings, and I'd be like, you don't know me. I will steal your shit. And I did do that for a few years. You know, a few years I was in and out, I was thrown here, thrown there, desperately trying to not be an asshole, to not carry on fucking up my life. But I had no will to live until after sitting in these rooms, you know, they say the seed is planted. And the seed was planted in you guys, in seeing people get their 30 days, in seeing for a very long time, I felt as though I was outside the bubble, if that makes any sense. Like, I was here, but I wasn't the same as you, you know. I judged you all. I either judged you because you hadn't been as far as I had been. You can't tell me what to do. You've never spent a night on the street. You know, who are you sitting at my last share I shared about, I was sitting in a dress. and I'd look at these women, and there weren't very many women 10 years ago in the rooms, none that I could relate with. I think that was just my ego. But there weren't very many women with strong recovery. And I'd look at these women and I'd think, you have no idea what it's like to degrade yourself on every single level just to get the next fix. And eventually I got to a point where I had to put that judgment aside and take the help wherever it was going to come from. And people reached out and they said, keep coming back. And I did. And sometimes I sat here high, and sometimes I stole the seventh tradition, and sometimes I was so desperate to get out of the dark, black hole that I had dug for myself. There were horrible things that have happened to me in my life, even in recovery, but I had to stop thinking of myself as the victim of life and the victim of my own head, the victim of my heart. Fuck, I'm always the victim of something, and I'm not. So about a week before I cleaned up, a member came and fetched me for a meeting, and when he dropped me back off, and I was too ashamed to say that I was still on the street, so I got him to drop me like down the road from where my mother lived. And as he dropped me off, and we sat in the car, and he said, "Laura, are you done? Is it still fun?" And I answered, "Yes, I'm done. No, it's not fun, I'm done." And I believed it. I wanted to believe it with all my heart. But I wasn't done. But thank God for that conversation, because when I was done, you see, my time, I can't really tell, but it was probably about a week later, I phoned him and I said, "I'm done." And when I did that, that was where I saw this program really work. And it was hard for me to accept it because I didn't feel deserving. I didn't feel worthy. I hated myself. I wanted to die. And there were people that wanted to love me, that wanted to help me, that saw a future for me that I couldn't see past the next minute. I couldn't see past it. And they put money together and sponsored my treatment. I didn't want to accept it, but I also knew that if I didn't, I was going to die. Something in me on the 27th of November, 2008, and it was God, something in me said, "This is not the life I had planned for you." And thank God I reached out for help that morning. Sorry, you see? And from that day forward, it has been a fight. And I don't want to sound negative here, but it has been a fight. I've had to fucking fight for my seat. I've had to fight for my recovery. And I've had to fight to love myself. I've had to fight to not forget that little girl in the garden, because she didn't deserve the shit that I've chosen for myself. My journey has been hectic. It has been very, very hectic. Sorry. And it has been incredible. I have got the most amazing life today. From somebody that wanted to die to somebody that has a life. And my life is crazy and chaotic, and a lot of my friends say to me, "I don't know how you do it." But I would not take away a single just for today. Not a single one. And I've made some horrific choices in my recovery. We were chatting, me and a couple of fellows were chatting the other day about how it works and the message of how it works. It works through God, in my experience. And I battled with that. I always believed in God. I always screamed out to God.
you know. But I had no faith that this God loved me. I felt as though I was sitting on the opposite side of a poker table and just getting one bad hand after another, bluffing my way through life. That's how I felt. When I put in the action of this program, I love myself. People love me. I don't hurt people. I don't hurt myself. And God blesses me with gifts of friendship. I mean, the gifts that I've received in my recovery, the ones that actually mean anything to me, are not tangible things. They're not, because I've built myself a career, I've lived overseas, I've driven fancy cars, I've made, you know, over 100,000 a month tax-free. I've done all that shit in my recovery. I've also eaten humble pie that tastes like plastic. You know, it's not even digestible, but I've done it. When I work this program, it doesn't matter what's on the outside. On the inside, I'm okay. And I've never had that before. Never. That fight within me, that constant noise, you know, that it goes. The noise, and sometimes it's still there, but the volume turns down, you know. One of the things I always say to my sponsees and my friends is my program is only as strong as I work it today. If I'm not working my program today, my head will be loud, my behavior will be fucked, and my heart will be sore. I will be lost, searching for direction. When I surrender to this program, the volume gets turned down on my head. There's like, I don't know, a beat in my heart. And there's a calm that everything is going to be okay. I don't know if you've seen those little stickers, everything's going to be okay. A lady in Joburg makes them. And there's a group on, I think it's on Facebook, and it's called Everything's Going to Be Okay. And people take pictures of these stickers that are stuck all over the country, all over the world, because everything is going to be okay. I look at my life today. I woke up this morning. My mom's got my kids, which is amazing. I love my children. They are my number one. But I also need to love myself, and sometimes that means taking a break and just breathing and enjoying time by myself, which I also could never do. I love being on my own. I love locking up my little house and climbing into bed after I've prayed, and which is something I also forget to do sometimes. And guess what? When I don't pray, my head is loud. When I don't pray, I'm fighting life. I'm swimming against the tide. God has always got my back. There's one of the strong women in this fellowship, and her WhatsApp status since I've known her says, "The universe has got my back." And I forget that. I forget that a lot. Every single thing that has happened in my life, prior to substance, during the substance, recovery, and this just for today, everything has been with God. How long have I been? Time to dance.
No, you've got a few more minutes.
Okay. I have no idea what I've shared. I didn't want to sit and obsess, because I do that a lot about everything. I obsess about what I'm going to eat for supper. And then I can't ever make a decision, and I end up eating cheese toast. And as I was driving here, I was just praying. Well, my friend said to me, just pray for God to speak. And something else that's, you know, you hear in these rooms, all these little things that you hear that are so true, is if I've helped one person, if I've given even the smallest bit of hope to one person in this room, then I've practiced my 12th step. Because if it wasn't for people in these rooms, when I was lost, I wouldn't be, not that I'm found, fuck, I'm still insane. But I would not be sitting here with a life worth living. And today I've got a life worth living. I've got friends that will call me out on my shit, will disown me when I'm acting out. I've got friends that will make me steak dinner. I've got friends that will love me when I can't love myself, because sometimes I can't. Sometimes my head is loud and sometimes my heart is broken and I don't know how to love myself. And it's my fellows and my friends that remind me that I am something special. I shared just now about my children, and I just want to share again because they have been my biggest gift in recovery. My everything, my whole life. And I think I'm going to end there because I talk a lot. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you.